The Ancient Gadget Deck's recipe is an emulation of Dr. Velian Crowler's Ancient Gear formula, which anticipates and depends on summoning the Ancient Gear Golem, which boasts high attack and defense stats, inhibits the use of spell and trap cards, and can inflict piercing battle damage to enemies attacked in defense position. Pouring a sense of manic synergy into the mix, Blackhat Jaguar tore away the use of traditional Ancient Gear effect monsters to keep role-playing cards meant to gather and fuse Ancient Gear monsters into more powerful versions of the Ancient Gear Golem. The gadget monsters add a sense of control and stability through every duel when attempting to summon a powerful Ancient Gear monster. The frequent gathering of 4-star machine-type monsters, searching and special summoning for compatible monsters when at least one has already been summoned, and calling forth machine-type monsters from the deck and graveyard when monsters are destroyed falls in well with the ability to summon powerful XYZ monsters or tribute and fusion summon even more powerful Ancient Gear Golems through the efforts of the gadgets. These intertwined strats give the Ancient Gadget Deck's recipe a multi-layered offensive and defensive stance against opponents able to summon monsters every turn and strats that destroy monster cards. If the beatdown and shutdown capabilities of the Ancient Gear Golem and Reactor Dragon strats can't come to fruition, powerful XYZ monsters can take their place until they do. Joey Wheeler's Monster Raider recipe looks like an absolute disgrace to Yu-Gi-Oh! At first glance. A capable duelist could rip it apart with a balanced, stable recipe that boasts strong monsters, punishing traps, and cunning spell cards. However, despite its outward appearance, a few too many mistakes, unintentional missteps, unbalanced bad draws, or weak monster cards will cause the Monster Raider recipe to overwhelm you. Never forget that Joey can still special summon powerful high-level monsters in retaliation to over-aggressive summoning strats, destroy cards on the field with his effect monsters, and he will almost always have a monster to summon every turn. Let's not also forget that effects and strats to destroy spell and trap cards are useless against Monster Raider because it uses no spell or trap cards in the build. For these reasons, Blackhat Jaguar tests all his initial recipes on the Monster Raider, just to ensure the strats within his sample recipes are viable in an actual duel, even if the stakes are very low. The Ancient Golem recipe is the first duel in the random run-through challenge to be taken seriously. Dr. Velian Crowler has a doctorate degree in dueling, and it shows. Ancient Golem comes off looking like a starter deck at first glance. Boasting the powerful Ancient Gear Golem and a few alternative high-level monsters that excel when paired with beatdown and shutdown strats, this build means business. The shortened monster count can even be forgiven considering the sheer number of spell and trap cards dedicated to special summoning monsters from the graveyard. The lack of powerful low-level monsters only ensures the need for such tactics and facilitates an even greater need for the opponent or Crowler himself to destroy his own monsters in order to summon newer, stronger ones. However, what can't be forgiven are the 4 banned cards in this recipe, including 3 copies of Heavy Storm that filthy cheater Crowler put in there to test Blackhat Jaguar's patience. Dr. Crowler's An Ancient Gear recipe is a terribly focused shutdown and beatdown-oriented build. Deviously engineered to rely on discarding, summoning, recycling, and destroying monster cards for various search or shutdown effects, the recipe remains balanced with its overcount of 22 monster cards. The good doctor has not only doubled down on his beatdown and shutdown strats by savagely sacrificing or shifting his machine-type monsters through the deck, hand, and graveyard, but he has also placed several synergy-based strats, banking on the ancient gear monsters and the fact that they're all machine-type through a very limited yet effective selection of spell cards, making this recipe very dangerous if more than one of Dr. Crowler's ancient gear monsters is left on the field without being destroyed going into the next turn. A high-level monster that shuts down spell and trap cards is never far behind a tribute summon in this recipe. The Ancient Gear Explode recipe is Dr. Crowler's most balanced deck so far. However, it does not capitalize on its threats for two reasons. The first reason is the availability of the eponymous strat. Crowler only has one Ancient Gear explosive in this build. The second is, if the goal is to summon one of his numerous shutdown and beatdown high-level Ancient Gear monster cards, tributing one of them could prove disastrous and counterproductive. Realistically, this deck is as balanced as it could be, clearly depending on a slow, drawn-on duel where tribute summoning a strong machine-type monster is the #1 goal, with the ability to terminate a monster and burn the opponent left in the back pocket. Unfortunately, it is not entirely impossible to overcome this time-tested strat with a speedier deck that relies more consistently on special summoning strong monsters, making it possible that Crowler may not be able to tribute summon some of his more lethal Ancient Gear monsters, because they can't be special summoned outside of certain circumstances. The Ancient Gear Explode recipe does not keep such conditions available, making it a misfire against a speedier special summon-oriented deck, or one with monsters able to destroy the opponent's monsters with their effects. Ancient Gear Rebuilt is the recipe that awarded Dr. Crowler his doctorate. This build can be absolutely brutal if not taken seriously. All of the best aspects of Crowler's previous recipes are at play here, with several new avenues of beatdown and shutdown destruction explored through the use of proxy fusion cards that will allow Crowler to special summon behemoths like Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, and game-ending XYZ monsters like Googly Eyes Drum Dragon and Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. Only a few critiques can be made of this build, most assuredly the poor choice of fusion materials such as Power Bond, which can deal the user needless damage for a fusion summon, over Ancient Gear Fusion or Ancient Gear Hunting Hound, which could play to the synergy aspect of the recipe. The use of just 3 gadget golems, which can hardly take the place of 3 Ancient Gear Wyverns, is regrettable. However, all of the shutdown and beatdown potential of this build is there, and the menace of a powerful monster stays looming over the opponent at all times. A speedier recipe would not always conquer here, because Dr. Crowler is no longer depending on a tribute summon to initiate a salvo against his opponent's life points. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more random run-throughs, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel.